The president's budget, especially when there's a divided government, Republicans controlling Congress, the Democrats controlling the White House, the president's budget in that situation is normally more of a political statement than anything else. It lays out a wish list. It basically says, if I were king, here's what I would do with the $4 trillion that I control.
President Obama has no doubt the way to make America stronger and get us out of debt is more taxes and more debt for a short time. This as you, the taxpayer, is forced to deal with a tax system that still relies on the abacus to make sense. And Washington fails to deal with the problem of deficits and waste. Let's welcome to MidPoint the current representative for Michigan's 7th Congressional District. He serves on the House Education and the Workforce Committee and the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Congressman Tim Walberg joins us. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Ed, good to be with you.
Let's put out right what we just heard a couple of seconds ago. The president's budget, is this just almost a laughable wish list where he's saying, I know I'm not going to get any of this, but Republicans, I just want to stick you guys in a corner and make my points?
Well, if that's what he wants to do, he will get pretty much what he's gotten so far. And that's a very divided government that ends up having a lot of stalemate that does not do the work of the people very well. I don't think that that's what the House and Senate want to do now. Harry Reid no longer blocks momentum that comes from the House. We will offer, I think, a stunning difference in our approach to governing and spending for that government, as well as the size, shape, and scope of government in the budget process we take, including appropriations, that we will send to the Senate, and hopefully they will debate it long and strong in the Senate and ultimately get something to the president that he has to make a decision on.
Let me ask you about this government accountability and waste, because this is something that I've talked about and we've talked about here now for weeks. The president wants to spend more money. He wants more taxes. But every single person I talk to that looks at government waste says if we just cut out all of the fluff, the waste, the trash that's there, we would have more money than we could possibly need to take care of roads, feed kids who are hungry, take care of the military budget. But no one seems to, and these are other people speaking, they say no one in Washington has the spine to deal with this right now. What is it going to take for people to go ahead, elected officials, to start dealing with the waste and cutting this out and putting money to good use?
Well, Ed, I just came from a hearing in Oversight and Government Reform Committee where we had 3 inspector generals in front of us, including the one that arguably is in the largest seat, and that's Inspector General Horowitz of Judiciary, the Justice Department. And the type of problems that he and the others are getting, 42 of them sat in the room today in support of the 3 that were at the dais, saying that we cannot get what is rightfully deserving of to us by the law that shows where waste, fraud, and abuse is taking place in our departments. We are pushing back on that to find the concerns and address them. However, it is absolutely true that we do not have a revenue problem in Washington. We have a spending problem. We have record levels of revenue coming in from the tax dollars, the disincentive, I believe, for going forward in the economy, but nonetheless revenue that comes in. We have to set priorities as well as cut. And the federal government has grown too large, as you might assume. It ought to be a grassroots up. We ought to be turning back programs, departments, agencies, and functions to the states where they were originally intended to be. And then I think we'd have plenty of money to do those appropriate things such as defense, infrastructure, roads, and bridges that the federal government should be responsible for.
We'll take a break in about 45 seconds, but in that interim right now then, how do we get started, Congressman? That's what American people want to know. And who's going to be brave enough to start breaking this logjam of waste?
Well, I can't say anything for the Senate because I'm not there, but the House needs to start it, and that's where it will start. Paul Ryan, who's chairing Ways and Means Committee, Tom Price at the Budget Committee, and then all of the Appropriations Committee cardinals and the chair have the responsibility that we've been looking forward to for some time to actually move forward a budget, put in appropriations bills, send it to the Senate after we passed it and debated it here strongly with the priorities I believe that will move us in the direction that America works best, and that's a back and away from the abusive spending and a unbelievable tax code that we have in place that has to be simplified, made less complex, and decreased in size. That must start in the House, and I think the American people should expect the U.S. House of Representatives and its leadership to do the right thing, to hold expectations at an appropriate level, but nonetheless to move the direction that makes our country work best. That's our responsibility. I think we're committed to doing it. I think you'll see evidence of that in a relatively short period of time.
All right, please stand by just a moment. A turn to education is part of where we're going after the break with Congressman Tim Walberg. We'll continue here on MidPoint, where we question everything. Let's welcome back to MidPoint. Four-term Republican Congressman from Michigan, Tim Walberg, joins us again. Congressman, let's get back to some of this money again here and the taxpayers and their right to know. Don't the taxpayers then need the right to know and need to be able to look at everything that their lawmakers are doing, the president, every organization, to know exactly where this tax money is being spent? And I'll tell you what, from a taxpayer's perspective, it's tough to find because too often we just get a lot of obfuscation and we have no idea where our money is going.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, Ed. I have introduced legislation, the taxpayers' right to know legislation, that does do that very thing. It requires our agencies, our departments to be accountable in making transparent records of what they're doing with the dollars they've been given. In every agency, every program, every department, they have to not only tell what the purpose is, but also outcomes that the taxpayer can see in real time. The impact of what they're paying for. I think as a result of that, we're going to find entire programs that show no improvement at all, and ultimately we'll have some quantifiable records that come from them themselves to say, this isn't needed anymore. The taxpayer doesn't deserve to pay for this. The taxpayer is asking for something less as far as the cost, but something greater in the outcome. So let's move the direction where things work.
I think that's what taxpayers are always thinking about, though, Congressman, is when we and the media and lawmakers use the words ultimately. We'd like something to ultimately happen, but they want something to happen now because what they're saying is 10 years down the road, it's not going to help me if I'm trying to make a mortgage payment right now and trying to send my kid to college. How do we then make something, push it through, and make it stick hard right now and hold people's feet to the fire before those flames burn out?
Well, I think two ways. One, it certainly takes resolve from those that they have elected to actually get in there and fight for the things that they said they would fight for. We have to make sure our expectations meet reality too. That this didn't happen overnight. It's not going to change overnight. However, it'll change more rapidly if the American public follows course in holding their legislators' feet to the fire, saying we don't expect 100% outcome, but we expect you to move the direction. Even after the aspect of Ronald Reagan, who said an 80% deal is something I'll take every time and go back with 20% later on. If we can coincide with that, I think we can accomplish a lot. It can start here with the budget because, frankly, we're going to have the opportunity to show the American people that we have listened to them, that we do not want to support anything that doesn't move toward balance. It won't take place next year, but if we can do it within a 10-year time frame, that's far better than anything that's been offered in recent history. I'm committed to doing that. I appreciate the fact of leadership on our Appropriations Committee as well as our Ways and Means and Budget Committee that have that same approach, that we've got to move it away from continuing to spend, continuing to increase the debt, and understanding that our American people only grow best by grassroots up and being allowed the opportunity to achieve themselves.
Congressman, I got about 2 minutes left. Hopefully we can get two things in here very quickly. I want to talk about specifically what's happening now, and this is the vaccination issue that's going around America at this point. The vaccination, the measles epidemic that we have at this point, or the outbreak, I should say. There are some people who say that the government now needs to get involved. We need to have very strict regulations on kids being able to come to school. They must have the vaccinations, or else they're not allowed to be there for fear of infecting other children. What's your take?
Well, I think that takes place at the most local level possible, starting with the parents, then moving to the school districts, the local communities. They can make those decisions, and I think they can make it well. I think the states come in there before the federal government steps in and has a one-size-fits-all. However, we have to make sure that people understand that we don't live in a vacuum. We have to take care of each other. And if indeed it's a vaccination, let's get to our doctor. Let's have our doctor take a look at our kids. If they determine the kids can handle a massive dose of, say, a number of vaccinations, well, fine. Let's work with that. If there are some allergies the child has, a doctor can determine that. We can work through it. But by and large, I think it's our responsibility to take care of our neighbors, to be responsible citizens, and make sure we do our part to protect people against some of these diseases that could be simply prevented if we just follow the matter of course that our physicians set out for us.
About 45 seconds left. A video purportedly from ISIS today showed the burning alive of the Jordanian pilot that was being held as a hostage right now. We're talking about defense budgets as well within the new budget. Should we not, though, spend as much as we can? Or what is your take on spending what we can in order to bring these killers to justice?
Well, I think we have to bring them justice, but we have to show in America that we have the resolve to do that again. That's leadership. And so I'm going to be delighted to hear Bibi Netanyahu speak to Congress. I think we'll hear a person with moral clarity. That's what we need a good dose of here in this country again, where America can speak, the world listens, and terrorists like these run to the holes in the ground where they ought to be for fear of impending doom that will come from a strong nation that America has always been. I think our people still have that resolve. I think with leadership we can move forward, and the rest of the world will fall in line and assist us in ridding this earth from this scourge, and it has to happen soon.
As I've always said, it all begins and ends with leadership. Congressman Tim Walberg, thank you so much for being here today. I'll look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Look forward to
take care. The Super Bowl is all about a game of a very different and dark sort to those who trade in human beings. That's coming up next, right here on MidPoint.